A popular take on Steelers Twitter nowadays is that the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into the 2026 season should quote-unquote bottom out or try to quote-unquote tank and intentionally try to be bad in 2026, or at least, completely rebuild this team, tear it down to the studs, get rid of all of your good veteran talent, load up on draft picks so you can get a top quarterback in the 2027 NFL draft, or just any draft in general. And personally, guys, I couldn't disagree more with this idea. I'm going to spend my entire time on today's show telling you why I disagree with the bottoming out idea for the Pittsburgh Steelers and why, it really doesn't work for any NFL team that tries to do this. Just ask the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns, if you don't ask me, who have had top 10 picks pretty much every single year over the last 2 decades. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Do you want the Steelers to quote-unquote bottom out in 2026 and not be as good and take a step back so that they can take their next franchise quarterback? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. And we'll start here with everybody's favorite, Andrew Fillipponi, who said earlier this week after the divisional round playoff games, draft position of each QB1 in the NFL's Final Four: Bo Nix 12th, Drake Maye 3rd, Matthew Stafford 1st, Sam Darnold 3rd, and then he says Steelers should be fine taking a step back in 2026. So that they can essentially take a quarterback as high as these guys were taken. But first, this example that Pony points to is imbecilic. It is so dumb because 2 of these teams, half the teams that he mentions here, didn't even draft their quarterbacks. They ended up getting them elsewhere via trade in the case of Matthew Stafford, where they traded the guy they did draft in the top 10, Jared Goff, to go get a guy in Matthew Stafford, and they also included 2 first-round picks along with Goff to go get a guy in Stafford that might win him a Super Bowl this year and has already delivered 1 Super Bowl to the City of Angels. And by the way, that final season with Jared Goff, Rams lost in the first round of the playoffs, like the Steelers, okay? Then you get to the Seattle Seahawks situation with Sam Darnold, and yes, he was drafted 3rd overall, but it was to the Jets, and the Seattle Seahawks signed Darnold in free agency after a 10-win season, just like the Steelers had this year, okay? Like Seattle and LA, when they got these quarterbacks, they were in very similar situations to the Pittsburgh Steelers currently. They were playoff caliber teams, and they ended up getting lucky and, finding their guy in free agency because guess what? They had a good supporting cast to support the talent of Matthew Stafford and support the talent of Sam Darnold. And that's what matters most, not, bottoming out and having a top 3 draft pick to take these guys where they ended up getting drafted. And by the way, they failed with their original teams. Okay. And then also Bo Nix was the 6th quarterback taken in that draft. He went 12th overall, but he was the 6th quarterback taken. A lot of people had a 2nd-round grade on Bo Nix. All right. And really, you can make an argument the Broncos are only as good as they are with Bo Nix because their defense is the best in the world, or arguably the best in the world. And I think Bo Nix is a pretty solid starting quarterback, all that different stuff. But if they don't have that number 1 or number 2 level defense, I'm not sure they're even close to as good as they actually are. But then also, like you look at guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Yes, they were all drafted by the organizations that they currently play for, but they were all playoff teams the year before they drafted them, and they all traded up to go get them. Okay, very similar situation to what the Pittsburgh Steelers are in now. All right, all of them, none of them bottomed out to get their star quarterback, and those 3 QBs are arguably the best in football today, okay? And that's because they had that playoff team surrounding cast that made the playoffs the year before, and they were able to provide a supporting environment for a young quarterback talent, which, as you guys are going to see throughout this show, is the most important thing when drafting a young quarterback. And in my opinion, guys, there are way more ways to find your guy at the quarterback position than just sucking, having a terrible football team, and then getting a high draft pick, all right? And, when you look at the numbers and you look at the types of quarterbacks and the success rates and all this different stuff, it just goes to show you that, having that supporting cast is the most important thing. So you guys can take a look here at some pretty interesting stats. The first one I'll show you guys, 12 of the 18, what I would consider to be locked in franchise quarterbacks. So these are guys that are either already locked into their second deals and they're worth those deals, or they're on their rookie contracts, but they're well on their way to locking themselves to long-term contracts. 12 of 8 of them, 2/3 of them, were not drafted in the top 10 with the team's own draft pick, okay? Like most of them either went to a different team, the team had to trade up for them, or they were just not drafted at all inside the top 10, okay? So teams that are drafting in the top 10 and selecting quarterbacks, they're not finding their long-term solution at the quarterback position. Another interesting fact is when it comes to Super Bowl titles, since the new millennium here, since 2000, there's only been 5 instances of a quarterback taken inside the top 10 without a trade-up that has won a title for that team. 2 of them were here in Pittsburgh with Big Ben Roethlisberger. Another 2 of them were with Eli Manning and the New York Giants, and then also Peyton Manning with the Indianapolis Colts. Those are the only 5 instances over the last around 25 years of Super Bowls where a team had a top 10 draft pick, selected a quarterback with that top 10 draft pick, and they ended up winning a Super Bowl with that organization. About 20 of the 25 Super Bowls that have been played since 2000, it came in a different variety. Okay, so this is not the only way to get a starting quarterback or a franchise quarterback like I keep hearing on Steelers Twitter. And coming up here, I'm going to explain why this is the case. I'm going to explain why, hit rates in the top 10 of the NFL draft among quarterbacks are so low and why Steelers fans should not want to be in that conversation if you want to get your next franchise quarterback. But before we get into that conversation, let me know down there in the comments, what is the percent chance that the Pittsburgh Steelers finds their next franchise quarterback this season? Put it on a scale of 0 to 100 for me down there in the comments section. Let me know your guys' thoughts here. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today. And while I'll tell you about our sponsor, let me know on a scale of 0 to 100, what are the chances the Steelers find their next guy to lead this franchise in 2026? Now, with that, if you guys want an awesome Steelers rope hat, kind of similar to the one that I'm wearing right here, guys, it's a slightly different one with the gold lettering on there. But if you guys want to go chatsports.com/pitrope, you guys can get this awesome rope hat from our website right now for a great price. Chatsports.com/pitrope, again, is the link. It's down there in the comments and description of today's show. And every time people click on that link and make a purchase, part of the proceeds go back to us here at Steelers Talk. So if you guys want to help out the channel and you want to get a new hat, you can go chatsports.com/pitrope to make it happen today. So the first thing that I want to discuss here in the second half of this video is that the hit rate on first-round quarterbacks, especially drafted very early, isn't super high, okay? And the reason for that is because they're going to very bad situations. These top-end quarterback talents, or so-called top-end quarterback talents, are going to teams that absolutely suck. They're going to the worst of the worst, okay? And why that's tough for these young quarterbacks and why they almost I'm not going to say they always fail, but the reason why a lot of them fail and then they go to other places and have success, Sam Darnold is a great example of this, is that the transition to the NFL is very, very hard for quarterbacks. College football and pro football are very different games. Not only is it a different speed, but also there's a lot more RPOs. There's a lot more shotgun. There's a lot more quick screen passes because it's more of a horizontal passing game in college as opposed to the vertical passing game of the National Football League. Not to mention they got to learn really how to, take snaps from under center, how to do 3-step footwork, 5-step footwork from under center, and then how to deliver an accurate football from that footwork. Okay, these guys, most of them, they're in the pistol or in the shotgun from the time they're in middle school all the way till they're done in college. Okay, so they got to learn that brand new skill set, and you got to learn how to play against NFL caliber players, which are the best in the world. And then you add on top of that a terrible roster, usually a bad coaching staff, a bad offense, and it just breeds disaster. You got a quarterback that's trying to transition and make a big transition to big boy football, and then you have the worst supporting cast in the league, and we act surprised when these guys aren't successful in their first 2 or 3 years in the National Football League, and then when they're not successful in their first couple years in the league, we declare them busts, and then we want them gone, and then they usually go somewhere else and they play us so much better. I mean, so many guys you can point this to. Jared Goff Goff. You can point this to Sam Darnold. You can point this at Baker Mayfield. You can point this at Daniel Jones. Okay, a lot of these guys go to better organizations and they play better because the supporting casts are better. And, I think that the goal when you're adding a new quarterback and a younger quarterback that's still transitioning into the league is, number one, it's ideal to give them time to make that transition. I'm a big proponent of not playing rookie quarterbacks year one unless the season is completely gone to shit. And I think, you want to have that solid foundation in place. You want to have a good O-line to protect them. You want them to have good running backs to be able to hand it off to and give them a run game, opening up the play-action game. You want to give them receivers that can create separation. You want to give them a good defense. You want to have that foundation in place so that when that quarterback steps in, it's not going to be as, dramatic of a transition, and they actually have a chance at success. And honestly, when you look at the teams that could add quarterbacks this year, Pittsburgh has one of the better foundations in place, all right? Especially if they can hire the right coaching staff this year and the right offensive play caller to help develop that young quarterback, whoever it is. It could be somebody in free agency like Malik Willis or somebody else. It could be a draft pick like Ty Simpson, okay? I think the Steelers have a pretty decent situation for a young quarterback to step into. They've got a pretty decent O-line, very good young offensive line. They've got good running backs where, the run game should be pretty solid here in Pittsburgh moving forward. You've got your number one wide receiver that's locked down for multiple years in DK Metcalf, and they've got the resources to add to that. They've got a very talented defense, and if you get the right defensive play caller, that Steelers defense should be very good. So there's a pretty decent foundation in place for the Pittsburgh Steelers to turn to a younger quarterback if they end up getting one. And, that's not even mentioning the tight end duo. You got Darnell Washington and then Pat Freiermuth, two really, really good tight end options as well. So I do think that Pittsburgh's foundation is one of the better options for younger quarterbacks to go to here in 2026. And honestly, guys, I think that the situation that a lot of Steelers fans seem to think that would be the best is, tear it down to the studs, get rid of everybody, suck for a season, and then we can draft our next franchise quarterback. That's going to fix everything. But, if you get that quarterback in 2027 in the top 5 and the roster is completely terrible around him, guess what? That quarterback's going to struggle for at least the next couple seasons as you build the roster back up. So I think, wanting Pittsburgh to suck, wanting them to completely blow this thing up, I think that it's going to rot the foundation of this team. And I just don't think that it's in the DNA of the Pittsburgh Steelers to want to lose games. I think that's a loser mentality. Now, that doesn't mean you'll hold on to older veterans forever, like I've said on this channel. Yes, I would think about trading TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and some of these older players, cutting Patrick Queen. It doesn't mean you can't get younger, but you have to try and keep your good players on the roster, and you have to try and be competitive while you're rebuilding this team, and you got to keep that foundation in place if you want that next quarterback to have success. And because of that foundation that the Steelers have, guys, I think the Steelers should take a swing on a younger quarterback in 2026. They've got some veteran options they can think about, like Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, bridge quarterback options that they could turn to. But honestly, guys, with the foundation in place, I think the Steelers have enough right now and enough resources to, potentially go and get their next franchise quarterback. And, Kyler Murray, former number one pick, kind of like Matthew Stafford. I'm not saying Kyler Murray's going to be the next Matthew Stafford, but, he's a former number one pick, has a lot of talent. Could think about him. Malik Willis in free agency, a lot of talent there, looked really promising after developing in Green Bay. You could think about him. Mac Jones, it looks like after a couple seasons in New England that didn't go so well, now he's in San Francisco and he balled out there for Kyle Shanahan's offense. Anthony Richardson is still only 24 years old. You could give him a shot for, a day 3 draft pick in a trade, or you could trade up and get a guy like Ty Simpson, who played in a pro-style offense at Alabama last year, and when he wasn't injured and playing through injury and sickness in the second half of the year was, the Heisman favorite, and he was putting together tape an NFL ready tape that we haven't seen from a lot of quarterbacks in many years. So there's options out there for the Pittsburgh Steelers, guys. And for me, even if you don't get your guy of the future in 2026, I do think you have the foundation to take a swing on somebody that could be that option for you over the next decade plus here in Pittsburgh. So that'll be it for today's show, guys. I appreciate all of your guys' support, and thank you guys so much for making it to the end of today's show. If you are a real one, make sure you guys type those real ones in all caps down there in the comment section, because I want to give some love to you down there in the comments. And that'll be it for today's show, guys. It's going to be pretty contentious. There's going to be a lot of takes. There's going to be a lot of conflicting takes on what the Steelers should do at the quarterback position. I know a lot of people want Will Howard. I know a lot of people, want to go free agency or trade. And, everyone's got a different opinion on who the next Steelers starting quarterback should be. But I want to say I appreciate all of your guys' support. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.